Today's discussion includes the state in comparative perspective. State in comparative perspective. In your syllabus, this is separately written, state in comparative perspective. And here what is written is that how the state can be compared. And the state has to be compared across two broad dimensions. One is the developed and the other is the developing. Now, there are a number of frameworks which we have to keep in mind, and this topic is very, very easy. Why? Because we have covered a lot of these things in the political theory itself in paper 1. So when I talk about the state in comparative perspective, I want to compare that in the developed world, what is the nature of state today? So if I look at the nature of state here, I have different schools of thought, which will tell me different story. One, I have the liberal school of thought, and the other, I have the Marxist school of thought. In the liberal school of thought, they'll talk about how the state has transitioned from something called as laissez-faire to a welfare state. And this is captured by the views of political economists also. 1 or 2 days back, we were talking about how the Adam Smith and David Ricardo started the liberal approach towards the political economy. And then later on, Karl Marx, he enters and he gives another approach. And then later on, John Maynard Keynes, he comes and he gives his own welfare orientation, or the welfare state theory comes then. So what I have seen is in the developed world, the states, they have transitioned from being laissez-faire to today, most of the states are welfare states with heavy bent towards capitalism. And this is the viewpoint from the liberals' perspective. And if we look at it from the Marxist perspective, they will either call the state as an instrument, or they will call the state as a as relatively autonomous. Okay, so who will tell me that this instrumentalist approach, which was started by Karl Marx, who has done the work for the developed countries of 20th century? There is a specific debate which we have done in political theory that is applicable here right away. The debate in which there is one scholar who is talking about the post-industrial state. The post-industrial state is the state of the later 20th century in the Western world. That post-industrial, called as post-modern also, is the state which is still an instrument in the hands of the capitalist. This work is done from the Marxist perspective by a particular scholar. I want you to tell me the name of the scholar. And then another scholar comes and he says, no, the state is relatively autonomous in the post-modern, in the developed world, the state which is the post-modern or the post-industrial or the post-capitalist state. This gives me the Marxist perspective. This is one set of discussion, and we have done all these things earlier also. If you have not been able to guess till now, I'll give you 1 more minute. If you can guess, then I'll tell you. So this is developed world, how things are going on there. Now we come to the developing world, in which again, if I want to know the nature of state, what is the nature of state? The nature of state is, from the liberal perspective, it is a soft state. Okay. It is a state which is in political decay. You remember who gave the idea of political decay? The idea of political decay is given by which philosopher, which political scientist? I beg your pardon. You tell me. And then we have the Marxist perspective, in which you will have dependency school, which will talk about, which is going to talk about what? The dependency school is going to talk about the periphery, the state as a periphery, or basically we use the word client state. This is the nature of state. Or the state is overdeveloped state. This is what the state looks like. This view given by Hamza Alavi, Dependency School, A.G. Frank, Frank Fanon, Cardoso, okay, Samir Amin. So the question is that in the developing world, what is the nature of state? Is the state overdeveloped? Is the state a client state? Or is the state in a framework of decay? Or is the state is soft state? So these are the various schools of thought which exists. Okay. From this, what you need to do is you need to then attempt the questions. We have to go into further details of this only, but that is what the topic is all about. Now, we'll go into further details and I'll tell you some frameworks. This debate which I was referring to, the instrumentalist versus the relative autonomy debate, when it comes to the post-developed, post-modern, post-capitalist state, this is a debate between Ralph Miliband and Nikos Politsans. The debate between Ralph Miliband takes the position of instrumentalist and Nikos Politsans takes the approach of relative autonomy. That's how they look at the state. Okay. They can ask you a question. Okay. They can ask you simply comment on the changing nature of state in the post-industrial or post-capitalist state. Let me write this question also for you. They can ask you a question. Comment on the changing nature of post-modern or post-industrial or post-capitalist state. Right? So that's how, what you will write? You will write from the perspective of liberals, how the state has evolved from laissez-faire to welfare. Then you'll write from the perspective of Marxists, how from one school of Marxists, it is still an instrumental state, how from another set of Marxists, it is a state which has relative autonomy. That's how you'll answer this question. Fine. Any doubts? Feel free to ask me. Okay. I think there is some part which is getting cut out. ऐसा हो रहा है? मुझे स्क्रीन में दिख रहा है. If that's the case, so we'll take care of it. Right? I think this is better. Okay. So I've done this. We have already covered all these things. Okay. What if the question comes that comment on the nature of state in the developing world? Then what will you say? Then again, you will explore two perspectives. Okay. Then again, you will explore two perspectives and you will say that, okay, from the viewpoint of Marxists, either the state is a client state, or from the perspective of overdeveloped state, the state has developed much more and has become more powerful because it is an imported institution and the society or the economy is largely traditional, whereas the state has become modern. Okay. So you will say this. Otherwise, you will come to the liberal approach and you may use the framework of soft state given by Gunnar Myrdal, or you can use the framework of political decay given by Samuel P. Huntington. You will say this. If you remember, we talked about prismatic society also back then. In the prismatic society, we have the coexistence of tradition and modernity. This framework was given by F.W. Riggs. I don't know how many of you remember this, but the same framework has to be adopted. Okay. Now, this is one set of questions which you can expect from this topic. The next set of discussion will go into further details of this state and even this state. Okay. For this, what we are going to do is we are going to understand this with the help of a question. So I'll write the question on the board itself and then I'll tell you how you have to look at this question. Let me first find the question. Okay, so first question is from the developed states perspective. The question says, a combination of certain kinds of pressure. What are those pressures? A combination of internal pressure and external pressure. Internal pressure will come via ethnic and regional forces, and external pressure will come via new kinds of setups which are coming. External pressure will come from EU, United Nations, transnational corporations, global markets. They are on the rise, and they are also going to change the nature of the state. The question is, a combination of internal pressure and external pressure has produced something called as crisis of nation state. You have to make a comment on this. Crisis of nation state. So this is a UPSC question itself, and this will help us understand how we have to look at this particular topic. So you have to answer this question. Now look, what we are seeing is the question is saying crisis of nation state. So first of all, you need to identify what is the examiner asking you. That is the examiner asking you from the perspective of developing world, or is the examiner asking you from the perspective of developed world? What do you think, and why do you think that? That's my question to you. First of all, tell me if there is a question like this in which you are basically asked that there is some internal pressure and there is some external pressure, and this is leading to crisis of a nation state. What is the examiner asking you? You try to tell me with the prior understanding that there is one nature of developed state, and there is one nature of developing state, okay, that we have discussed right away. Now from this knowledge, tell me what is the question trying to ask you. I would want you to tell me what is the question trying to ask you. The question revolves around crisis of nation state. Where has the nation state idea fully being realized? Can you say, first of all, that in developing countries, the idea of nation state is fully realized? Can you say that? No, you can't say that. Why? I'll give you the example of India. If we take the example of India, one of the things which we are still trying to do is we are still trying to remain as one nation. That's what we are trying to do. We are trying to remain as one nation, and in that we are undertaking all kinds of things. Many times we see expressions, okay, if you are in Maharashtra, you have to speak Marathi. If you are in Karnataka, you have to speak, let's say, Kannada, or for that matter, Telugu. These are regional assertions. Sometimes they overpower national identity. And I told you multiple times that in India, we are trying to build this nation. And after 47, we have said that you all are Indians. So a lot of people don't associate with that. And they come up with demands like Dravid Nadu or Khalistan, or the Nagas, they wanting their own entity, because they don't consider themselves to be Indians. So that's a challenge for us. And the fact that we are able to still not consolidate our national identity, that is something which is I beg your pardon, reality also, and that is something which we have to continuously work upon. But can I say the same thing for countries in West, where the concept of nation state is now well institutionalized? What is the meaning of this? The meaning is that if I look at the situation in the Western states, through certain processes over a period of time, okay, 1871, Germany comes into being. Okay, Germany is a result of consolidation of all the German speaking areas. And then Germany came into being. The consolidation of all the people who were speaking Italian, that became Italy as a country. And now they don't have problems whereby some people are saying, okay, we are not Germans and we want to go and have a separate country. Those kinds of pressures are not there. And nation states idea is well institutionalized there. That is what is happening there. Let me take you back. If I talk about the medieval times, from the medieval times, the change is that certain monarchies, centralized monarchies which existed in medieval times in Europe, they were transitioning towards something called as a modern state. How did this transition happen? The monarchies, they were being challenged. Why they were being challenged? Remember the works of John Locke we have done. Thinkers like John Locke, they are talking about popular sovereignty, they are talking about minimalist government, they are talking about natural rights. So they are challenging the way things are done and they want to create a new state, the something which came out later on to be a laissez-faire state. Now, once the laissez-faire state came, the idea was that this is the state, this is the authority, this is going to govern, and the people who are residing in a territory, they slowly and steadily started building a national identity for themselves to the extent that, okay, all the German speaking areas, it took a long period of time for Bismarck to bring all of them together and create Germany. उससे पहले तो क्या था, अलग अलग थे. हाँ, स्टेट बन गई थी, वो उस स्टेट में अपने आप को मानते थे that we are one. The state was created, they used to consider themselves as one, but they said that, okay, there are people who are just like us. So can we all come together and make Germany? That is something which happened there. From centralized monarchies, we went towards minimalistic state, and in this, the people who would reside, they eventually developed a psychological unity. They became a nation. And therefore, the nation state idea got cemented in Europe. In this nation state idea, there were two important elements. One is that because we are a nation, so there is a psychological unity. Second, because we are a state, so we have a common territory. This territory has some people. Those people, they are sovereign. Those people, they have their own government, and that government is sovereign. So eventually, I have this area in which there are a lot of people residing, and a lot of people who are residing, they have a fixed territory. In this territory, they have a government, and this government is sovereign in this territory. And later on, they are saying there is no conflict between us. We are one, so there is a unity also. This is nation state. This came up in Europe over a period of time. Okay. And modern nation states, nation states, they are a certain modern feature which exists. So Europe में ऐसा हो गया. Now what is happening is, in the 20th century and 21st century, this nation state, in which this is a very, very important element, that all nation states are sovereign in their own territory, in their domestic sphere, and with respect to the relations which they have with, which they will have with the world. Now what is happening is a shift is coming. This nation state is feeling that there are pressures. There are some ethnic pressures which are emerging. There are some pressures from outside entities which are emerging. And this is leading to something called as the crisis of nation state, in which the main idea is state still sovereign? Can I still say state is sovereign? Why? First idea which is coming, crisis of nation state. क्या crisis है? दो crisis है, internal domain में crisis आ रहा है, external domain से crisis आ रहे हैं. दो reasons हैं crisis के. Crisis है that my nation state, the way it was working earlier, it is finding itself to be in a state of crisis. And we are basically talking about the developed world here. The question is around developed world. The question is not about per se developing world. So here, what will happen is, let's look at some state to understand it. Let's look at the state of America first. If you look at the state of America, what is happening is some ethnic forces are working, and they are talking about white supremacy on one hand side, sorry. And there are other people who believe that no, this ethnic idea of white supremacy, this is violative of the essence of America, because the essence of America is that it is a plural country. It celebrates the immigrants, sorry, and then it builds on that, and that's how we have lived. So we have lived with liberty, we have lived with equality, we have lived with pluralism, and that's how America had. That's the American identity. But now there is idea of making America great again by Trump, in which he's focusing on ethnic groups, he's focusing on white supremacists, or he's talking about the fact that how we have to make America great again. And in that, there are ethnic equations, there is polarization, people are getting divided into blocks of pro-immigrants, anti-immigrants. So this is going on, and the state is changing its nature that way. On one hand side, Trump is doing this, and on the other hand side, you have New York, which is electing a Muslim as their governor, which tells that the ethos on which America is built, they still continue to be there. But the problem is, because of these two tendencies which are coexisting in America, what you find is that America is slowly getting divided, and people will be either on this side or it will be on that side. And that is problematic, because the ethnic reasons are forcing state to take measures like anti-immigration. Trump is signing orders which essentially are pushing anti-immigration, or they are regulating their immigration laws in a way that it is becoming difficult. So when I look at this, I say, okay, the way modern nation state of America was built, that is going through a crisis phase, because internally pressures are coming and you are not able to retain your previous identity. That's the first argument. Okay. Second argument is, for that we have to go to Europe. If you look at the European states, what has happened is, many of the European states now are saying that we are ready to share our sovereignty, and we are ready to share our sovereignty with institutions like EU. European Union is making monetary and fiscal policies for countries of Europe, those countries which are in the EU. Now, sovereignty was such an important idea. If you remember, Hobbes is talking about sovereignty, and sovereignty has been one of the most important ideas in political science in modern times. And now you're saying you are ready to dilute your sovereignty. This is the crisis of nation states. Why they are doing? Because there is a shift happening in the way in which people operate. Now the people in Europe, and when I say now, the idea is in the last 30-40 odd years, what has happened in Europe is, the people are saying that if you look at, let's say, a country like France, or a country like Germany, or a country like, let's say, Greece, or Italy, or Portugal, what they are doing is, they are saying, if we all pool our resources, and if we all create something which is called as a supranational body, we will be probably able to do better for ourselves. That's the basic idea. We would understand each other better, we would make common policies, we would implement them in a common manner, and this will ensure that Europe remains peaceful. Okay. This is a significant shift. Why? 1871, Germany is created. Germany is this nation state in which Germany has its own sovereignty, and Germany, using that sovereignty, is going to govern its people. Now, Germany is saying, okay, I will share this with other countries, and we will collectively sit here and we will have a legislature, an executive, a judicial wing, and a central bank, and we will do things collectively. The problem is the moment you start doing things collectively, you will have to let go of some positions. Somewhere you will have to make compromises. Germany has been making compromises so as to ensure that Greece does not go into crisis state. France is also doing this. But now the people in Germany and France are saying that why are we paying for Greece? So there is a drawback also. You come together in the form of something called as security community. We are yet to do the concept of security community. The more we come together, the lesser will be the possibility that we'll fight. If lesser is the possibility that we'll fight, then let's come together. But the more you come together, you may have to take care of others who are not doing a good job. Will your people be okay that you keep doing this job? This is the same argument which was given by UK, which was given by the people of UK to its government, that why are we opening our London to all the immigrants of Europe, and they are coming and taking jobs here and they are making things difficult for us. So it's better that we come out of EU. And that is when Brexit happened in 2016. So the moment I am talking about these things, there is a pro, there is a con, but we are not interested in whether it is right or wrong. We are interested in the fact that it is changing the nation state. The nation state which existed here, initially the nation state which was created in the 19th century, in the later part of 20th century, it started getting changed. And this is only one thing which is forcing Germany to give up some control and adjust. There are other things also which are at play. For example, United Nations and various treaties which are a part of UN will be implemented by all the countries. So can I say these countries, their independence in decision making is getting reduced because they have to implement all those things? Transnational corporations. So the transnational corporations, the Marxists will say, these corporations, they will lobby for their interests and they will force the politicians to make policy in their favor. So the state is going to be tilted. That's the instrumentalist approach, Marxists. That is going to happen. Global markets, same argument. So a combination of this is resulting in crisis of nation state. The nation state which came up, which had these characteristics, is slowly and steadily moving in a direction whereby it is pooling its sovereignty, whereby the government's authority is getting diluted because external institutions, global markets, transnational corporations, they are forcing the governments to dilute their authority. The people are becoming more cosmopolitan, and territory, they are talking about borderless world, because borderless world and cosmopolitanism, they go hand in hand. The idea is, why are you telling us that there is an imaginary line on the earth, and if you are on this side of the earth you will get this much benefits, if you are on that side of the line you will get this much benefits? We don't want to create such a world. People there are talking about all these things. So cosmopolitan democracy, cosmopolitanism, global solidarity, there are ideas in Europe. Okay, these are ideas of the developed world. We don't have those kinds of ideas yet. So the developed world is talking around this, and now this is the crisis. That's not how 19th century Europe was. So the later part of 20th century and even in 21st century, this is continuing. Ek taraf, and there is a paradox also. On one hand side, you have people who believe in cosmopolitanism, and on the other hand side, now number of people have started coming up and they are saying close our borders to immigrants. So these are two diagrammatically opposite strands which are visible. The winning of a Muslim in New York as a governor shows me this trend is alive. But at the same time, coming up of Trump in USA, which tells me that ethnic factors are also becoming important, they are also alive. They're coexisting. And the natures of the modern state that is constantly changing. Globalization is happening. Globalization is telling people should move more. Globalization is saying that, okay, for new technologies, you have to change your policies. Globalization is saying you have to open your economy. All these things is making this nation state weaker. Who is becoming stronger? Global corporations are becoming stronger. Who is becoming stronger? Sometimes local entities are becoming stronger. Can I say that in India, 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act have come after 1991, and the idea is to give power at the grassroots level. So this nation state has to share power within and has to listen to somebody from outside, which is, let's say, UN. So is there something which is changing? This is what the topic is all about. That look at this institution state. We'll go back to our triangle. Look at this institution of state, and in this institution of state, tell me, first the state looked like A, now the state has started to change its nature. This is where the crisis is going on, and this is what the question is asking you. And the question has even told you that the crisis is coming from internal sphere, it is coming from external sphere. You just have to elaborate on this. Does it make sense? Are you able to understand this? Is there any kind of a doubt here? Please feel free to ask me. The idea that there is this shift happening in the nature. Okay. Any doubts? Anything? Okay. So this is one thing which you have to take in mind. One part of the discussion. Now we come to another question to understand another discussion. And for this also, we'll take the help of a question. Let me write the question for you. Where is the question? Just give me a minute. So the question is, the post-colonial state was thought of an entity. It's a UPSC question only. The post-colonial state was thought of an entity that stood outside and above society, as an autonomous agency. Explain. What is the question trying to say? The UPSC question. The post-colonial state was thought of an entity that stood outside. First of all, the question is about post-colonial state. So now our discussion has shifted towards this part, which we started in the early, which we discussed earlier. Now we are here, developing world, or the post-colonial in the developing also, post-colonial world. We are interested in knowing the nature of the state here. The argument is, यहाँ की जो स्टेट है, the post-colonial state, इसको माना गया है एक ऐसी entity that stood outside and above the society as an autonomous agency. Meaning, what is the meaning of this? They are saying that if you look at the post-colonial state, and in the post-colonial state, if you look at the institution of state, then this institution of state is very different, and disconnect between society and state, it does not exist. Okay. My nature of state. For example, I'll give you a very easy example to understand this. If I talk about the Indian state is a state which is a secular state. It is a state where equality is the norm, at least in the preamble and the constitution. This is a state whereby we would not want to have injustice. This is a state whereby we will have rule of law. Okay, if I say all these things, can I say this is what is India, at least on paper, as per the constitution, or something which we are trying to achieve? A modern state which is sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic, the 5 words written in preamble, which is trying to give its people justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. Can I say all those things? The question is saying this is disconnected from society. That's the question. The post-colonial state was thought of an entity that stood outside and above the society as an autonomous agency. Explain. Why are we saying this? What's the reason of saying this? Can you tell me? I'll give you some dominant perspectives around this. Which thinker's perspective can help us understand this? Can you tell me? We have already done it in political theory. Can you tell me which thinker will come to my rescue to understand this? Which thinker has talked about a disconnect between a state and society, such that the state is not reflective of what is going on in the society? The state is an imported institution. Who will talk about the state being an imported institution? Can you tell me? अगर तुम नहीं बता रहे हो, तुम्हारे घर में पानी होगा. पानी को लो और अपनी नाक उसमें डुबा दो. ठीक है? You just need चुल्लू भर पानी. Why? Because we have done this already. अब सुनो. When we talk from the perspective of Hamza Alvi, what is Hamza Alvi saying? Hamza Alvi is talking about overdeveloped state. And Hamza Alvi is saying that if you look at the state in Pakistan, and even the same is applicable for countries like India, the state is a modern state. It has modern structure, whereby it has democracy. It has a merit-based bureaucracy. It has rule of law. It has commitment to ideas like equality. But if you look at society, the society does not want to resolve conflicts in a democratic manner. The society still wants to go for violence. The society is not secular. सोसाइटी को नहीं समझ आता कि स्टेट हमारी मदद क्यों नहीं कर रही अगर हमारा धर्म X है या Y है. Why? There is no secular society. How can a secular state come? Society को समझ नहीं आता how we all can be equal. And society, unfortunately, still works on favoritism and nepotism and not on merit. So if that is the case, you tell me that the state is trying to do something which is right. We are not saying it is wrong. It is trying to copy West. But the indigenous society is very different. The indigenous society works in a different capacity. That's a problem. That's a problem. Can I use some other framework? Those of you who attended yesterday's or day before yesterday's class, they would know the idea of political decay given by Samuel P. Huntington. He's saying that sometimes in these countries like India, what happens is economic growth is more than political growth. So now people demand more. Political institutions, politicians, they can't give. For example, I'll demand accountability. Why? I am more aware about my rights. The state doesn't give it because it still functions in a secret manner. It does not want to give all the information through which I can check the accountability. So what happens is they are not able to take care of them. In this situation, there will be a decay here and there will be a lot of instability, but there will be a disconnect. Hamza Alvi is saying the state is overdeveloped, the society is much behind, and then the analyses are different, that overdeveloped state is very powerful and all those ideas comes, relative autonomy. We are not interested in those ideas. We are interested only in the idea that overdeveloped state has a disconnect with the society and economy. Similarly, Samuel P. Huntington is saying at the political level, they have not grown. At the economic level, urbanization has happened. People are becoming more aware and they are asking for more rights and they are not able to give. There is a disconnect. And that is what the question is saying. My state is outside and above society. It is not functioning as per what the society, how the society works. And it is trying to push down things on the society, and society is going to react. This is what is the nature of post-colonial state. Okay. Let me introduce one idea and then we'll be done with this. If I look at things from the perspective of another Indian thinker, that thinker is कहाँ गया? पार्था चैटर्जी. यहां पर क्या बात होती है, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात है, बताता हूं तुमको हाउ टू अंडरस्टैंड इट. जस्ट अलाउ मी अ मिनट. हाँ, ये मिल गया. इंडिया को डिफाइन किया जा रहा है, इंडिया को स्टडी किया जा रहा है, इंडिया की स्टेट को स्टडी किया जा रहा है और बात की जा रही है क्या, कैसे, कब, कैसे होता है. दो टर्म्स डिफाइन की जाती हैं. वन इज पॉलिटिकल सोसाइटी, द अदर इज civil society. Both exist in India. This civil society is that part of India which has education, which is aware, and which wants to function on the basis of merit. I have education, I am aware, I want to function on the basis of merit. Generally, these people, they live in urban areas. Okay. I'm talking about urban people and I'll call them urban elites. Okay. Or the middle class. In the middle class also, I'll say upper middle class. But there is another set of India which resides, which does not have education, which may not be as aware, which instead of merit would want favoritism to function. If that is the India, if that is also the India which exists, Partha Chatterjee is saying represents a political society. This represents a civil society. If they want to protest, they will be non-violent. Probably they would use internet. They would lobby. That's how they would protest. If they want to protest, they may go for violence. They may go for bandhs, Bharat Bandh, and they will say that on the basis of caste, religion, region, resources should be distributed. So both the entities exist in India. Now my state in practice, now my state in theory at the level of what is written in the constitution should listen to them because they represent something which the constitution wants to create. But the constitution is not relatable to everyone. So there is this set also which resides. And the state is now caught whether to stay on those lines which helps in creation of civil society, or the state should tilt so as to take care of this also because they are a huge chunk of people. So within India, if I use it in a very crude sense and give you the example, the idea is एक rural India है, एक urban India है. रूरल इंडिया ज्यादा है, पॉलिटिकल सोसाइटी बहुत बड़ी है, सिविल सोसाइटी कम है. नाउ द स्टेट इज इन अ वे is confused what needs to be done. Okay, if I use the concept of civil society, this concept of civil society kahan se aaya hai? Developed countries. If I India, I can't understand India well because in India this is the larger chunk. So you use the different terminology, you use different frameworks in India. Don't use civil society in India because civil society is only this much percentage of people, whereas this percentage of people is the political society. This is the view given by Partha Chatterjee that look, there are things which are Western in nature. One of the most important things which is Western in nature is the idea of secularism. This is not an Indian idea. My people don't understand this, but you are saying apply this to India. This is a Western concept. And just like secularism is a Western concept, similarly, civil society is a Western concept. We are applying it to India, but if we try to understand India only through this perspective, obviously we will not be able to understand India. So Partha Chatterjee is saying that you have to go for this understanding also. That's how the post-colonial state functions. So my post-colonial state, the way it functions, it has to be understood very differently, and I can't understand it with the framework which is presented to me by the West. So इससे क्या होता है समझ भी नहीं आएगा. For example, there is overdeveloped state concept specifically for countries of developing world, and that also specifically for the countries in South Asia. The overdeveloped state concept is not applicable in Europe or North America. It is only applicable here. So I've created my own frameworks. And that is how actually you have to do things. That is how you actually have to understand things. But yes, if you keep analyzing India by looking at all the things which exist in Europe, you'll not be able to understand. That's a wrong way of doing things also. That will be a very ethnocentric or Eurocentric viewpoint. That also exists among scholars, but हम वो नहीं पढ़ना चाहते क्योंकि वो reality नहीं बता पा रहे इंडिया की. Then, to understand India, you have to look at how two concurrent things are going on. एक, ये imported institution लाकर समाज पे डाल दिया. Now there is interaction happening. So the state, which is democratic in nature, is impacting the institution of caste, which is changing its role from ritualistic to secular. So society पे फर्क पड़ रहा है. Political sociology approach में किया था हमने. The new state is changing society also, and society is telling the state, look, ये secularism जो वेस्ट का है वहां रखो, हमारे वाले को बदल देते हैं, तो हमारे वाला अलग secularism चल रहा है. So the post-colonial state started as an imported institution, started as an overdeveloped state, and is continuously changing so as to become more and more relevant as per the society, and at the same time is influencing the society कि थोड़ा तुम बदलो, थोड़ा हम बदलेंगे, और कहीं बीच में मिल जाते हैं. So I will accept some of the things of the society. For example, I accept as a state, I accept that I accept the fact that, let's say, अब तुमको कैसे समझाऊं, तुमको पता नहीं होगा ये. There is a community called Daudi Bohra community in India. As per their belief, they practice female genital mutilation. A female genital mutilation is practiced by them as a part of their culture. समाज में है. State क्या कह रही है? Women's sexuality is a matter of choice. ये state कहेगी. Then how can society come and try to influence the sexuality of women by female genital mutilation? Plus, it is something which cannot be allowed because it is violative of dignity of women. So you have culture saying something, you have state saying something. But in India, this is allowed because the state is saying, okay, to a certain extent, I'll allow you to work the way you are. But the same thing the society was doing in the form of triple talaq, the state came and said, no, you can't do it. Interaction is constantly changing the state, changing the society also. So the fact that the post-colonial state is outside and above the society, that is how actually things start. But it is eventually changing now. We can't say that this remains to be the case. The state is changing itself as per what the society is, and for this you should also have this framework in mind, a triangle. So this is not separated entirely from society. This both aspects are happening. Are you able to understand this? Politicization of caste, casteization of politics, both are happening. So now my state is not something which is outside and above the society, but yes, in the initial years of my independence, this was true, that the Indian state, it functioned in the manner such that the connect with society was not there. Okay, that is what the question is. And so, in summary, what I can say is that in this case, we have said that this nature is changing. Why? Because there are forces, internal forces, external forces, which are forcing the developed state to change. And this is called as crisis of nation state. Here, the state and the society disconnect is something which exists, and that is also something which is getting, over a period of time, it is getting changed. Okay, done. So now the dictation for this part, which I'll do, and you will find it, and that's how we are moving forward. Okay, chalo, we'll end the class here. Thank you so much, everyone. And tomorrow we are going to start with pressure groups, political parties, and social movements. Fine. Thank you so much.